the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Adiparva, Section 59, Adivnasavatrana Parva. Soinka said, O son, thou hast narrated to me this extensive and great history commencing from the progeny of Bhrigu. O son of Sutha, I have been much gratified with thee. I ask thee again, to recite to me, O son of Asutha, the history composed by Vyasa. The varied and wonderful narrations that were recited amongst those illustrious Satsyas assembled at the sacrifice, in the intervals of their duties of that long-extending ceremony, and the objects also of those narrations, I desire to hear from thee, O son of Asutha. I recite them, therefore, all those to me fully. Soti said, the Brahmanas, in the intervals of the duties, spoke of many things founded upon the Vedas. But Vyasa recited the wonderful and great history called the Bharata. Soinka said, that sacred history called the Mahabharat, spreading the fame of the Pandavas, which Krishna-Dwaipayana, asked by Janamejaya, caused to be duly recited after the completion of the sacrifice, I desire to hear duly. That history hath been born of the ocean-like mind of the great Rishi of soul purified by yoga. I, thou foremost of good men, recite it unto me, for, O son of Asutha, my thirst hath not been appeased by all thou hast said. Soti said, I shall recite to thee from the beginning of that great and excellent history called the Mahabharata composed by Vyasa. O Brahmana, listen to it in full. As I recite it, I myself feel a great pleasure in reciting it. So ends the 59th section in the Adivnasavatrana Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adiparva, Section 60, Adivnasavatrana Parva continued. Soti said, hearing that Janamejaya was installed in the snake sacrifice, the learned Rishi Krishna-Dwaipayana went thither on the occasion. And he, the grandfather of the Pandavas, was born in an island of the Yamuna, of the virgin Kali by Sakti's son, Parasara. And the illustrious one developed by his will alone his body as soon as he was born, and mastered the Vedas with their branches, and all the histories. And he readily obtained that which no one could obtain by asceticism, by the study of the Vedas, by vows, by fasts, by progeny, and by sacrifice. And the first of Veda-knowing ones, he divided the Vedas into 4 parts. And the Brahmana Rishi had knowledge of the Supreme Brahma, knew the past by intuition, was holy, and cherished truth. Of sacred deeds and great fame, he begot Pandu and Dhritarashtra and Vidura in order to continue the line of Santanu. And the high-souled Rishi, with his disciples all conversant with the Vedas and their branches, entered the sacrificial pavilion of the royal sage, Janamejaya. And he saw that the king Janamejaya was seated in the sacrificial region like the god Indra, surrounded by numerous Satsyas, by kings of various countries whose coronal locks had undergone the sacred bath, and by competent Ritvikas like unto Brahmana himself. And that foremost one of Bharata's race, the royal sage Janamejaya, beholding the Rishi come, advanced quickly with his followers and relatives in great joy. And the king, with the approval of his Satsyas, gave the Rishi a golden seat as Indra did to Vrihaspati. And when the Rishi, capable of granting boons and adored by the celestial Rishis themselves, had been seated, the King of Kings worshipped him according to the rites of the scriptures. And the king then offered him his grandfather Krishna, who fully deserved them, water to wash his feet and mouth, and the arghya, and kin. And accepting those offerings from the Pandav Janamejaya and ordering the kin also not to be slain, Vyasa became much gratified. And the king, after those adorations bowed to his great-grandfather, and sitting in joy asked him about his welfare. And the illustrious Rishi also, casting his eyes upon him and asking him about his welfare, worshipped the Satsyas, having been before worshipped by them all. And after all this, Janamejaya with all his Satsyas, asked that first of Brahmanas, with joined hands, the following, O Brahmana, thou hast seen with thy own eyes the acts of the Kurus and the Pandavas. I am desirous of hearing thee recite their history. What was the cause of the disunion amongst them that were of such extraordinary deeds? Why also did that great battle, which caused the death of countless creatures, occur between all my grandfathers, their clear sense overclouded by fate? O excellent of Brahmanas, tell me all this in full as everything had happened. Hearing those words of Janamejaya, Krishna-Dwaipayana directed his disciple Vasampayana seated by his side, saying, the discord that happened between the Kurus and the Pandavas of old, narrate all to the king even as thou hast heard from me. Then that blessed amongst Brahmana, at the command of his preceptor recited the whole of that history unto the king, the Satsyas, and all the chieftains there assembled. And he told them all about the hostility and the utter extinction of the Kurus and the Pandavas. So ends the 60th section in the Adivnasavatrana Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 61, Adivnasavatrana Parva continued. Vasampayana said, bowing down in the first place to my preceptor with the 8 parts of my body touching the ground, with the devotion and reverence, and with all my heart, worshipping the whole assembly of Brahmanas and other learned persons, I shall recite in full narration I have heard from the high-souled and great Rishi Vyasa, the first of intelligent men in the 3 worlds. And having got it within thy reach, O monarch, thou also art a fit person to hear the composition called Bharata. Encouraged by the command of my preceptor, my heart feeleth no tear. Hear, O monarch, why that disunion occurred between the Kurus and the Pandavas, and why also that exile into the woods immediately proceeding from the game at dice prompted by the desire of the Kurus for rule. I shall relate all to thee who askest it, thou best of the Bharata race. On the death of their father those heroes, the Pandavas, came to their own home. And within a short time they became well versed in the science of the bow. And the Kurus, beholding the Pandavas gifted with physical strength, energy, and power of mind, popular also with the citizens, and blessed with good fortune, became very jealous. Then the crooked-minded Duryodhana, and Kama, with the former's maternal uncle, the son of Suvala, began to persecute them and devise means for their exile. Then the wicked Duryodhana, guided by the counsels of Sakuni, his maternal uncle, persecuted the Pandavas in various ways for the acquirement of undisputed sovereignty. The wicked son of Dhritarashtra gave poison to Bhima, but Bhima of the stomach of the wolf digested the poison with the food. Then the wretch again tied the sleeping Bhima on the margin of the Ganges and, casting him into the water, went away. But when Bhimsena of strong arms, the son of Kunti, woke, he tore the strings with which he had been tied and came up, his pains all gone. And while asleep and in the water, black snakes of virulent poison bit him in every part of his body. But that slayer of foes did not still perish. And in all those persecutions of the Pandavas by their cousins, the Kurus, the high-minded Vidura attentively engaged himself neutralizing those evil designs and rescuing the persecuted ones. And as Sakra from the heavens keeps in happiness the world of men, so did Vidura always keep the Pandavas from evil. When Duryodhana, with various means, both secret and open, found himself incapable of destroying the Pandavas who were protected by the fates and kept alive for grave future purposes, such as the extermination of the Kuru race, he then called together his counselors consisting of Vrisha, Kama, Dasasana and others, and with the knowledge of Dhritarashtra caused a house of lac to be constructed. And King Dhritarashtra, from affection for his children, and prompted by the desire of sovereignty, sent the Pandavas tactfully into Banabat. And the Pandavas then went away with their mother from Hastinapur. And when they were leaving the city, Vidura gave them some idea of impending danger and how they could come out of it. The sons of Kunti reached the town of Varnavata and lived there with their mother. And, agreeably to the command of Dhritarashtra, those illustrious slayers of all enemies lived in the palace of Lac, while in that town. And they lived in that place for 1 year, protecting themselves from Purochna very wakefully, and causing a subterranean passage to be constructed, acting according to the directions of Vidura, they set fire to that house of Lac and burned Purochna, their enemy and the spy of Duryodhana, to death. Those slayers of all enemies, anxious with fear, then fled with their mother. In the woods beside a fountain they saw a Rakshasa. But, alarmed at the risk they ran of exposure by such an act, the Pandavas fled in the darkness, out of fear from the sons of Dhritarashtra. It was here that Bhima gained Hidimban, the sister of the Rakshasa he slew, for a wife, and it was of her that Ghatotkacha was born. Then the Pandavas, of rigid vows, and conversant with the Vedas, wended to a town of the name of Ekachakra and dwelt there in the guise of Brahmacharins. And those bulls among men dwelt in that town in the house of a Brahmana for some time, temperance and abstinence. And it was here that Bhima of mighty arms came upon a hungry and mighty and man-eating Rakshasa of the name of Vaka. And Bhima, the son of Pandu, that tiger among men, slew him speedily with the strength of his arms and made the citizens safe and free from fear. Then they heard of Krishna, the princess of Panchala, having become disposed to select a husband from among the assembled princes. And, hearing of it, they went to Panchala, and there they obtained the maiden. And having obtained Draupadi, as their common wife, they then dwelt there for a year. And after they became known, those chastisers of all enemies went back to Hastinapura. And they were then told by King Dhritarashtra and the son of Santanu, Bhishma, as follows, in order that, O dear ones, dissensions may not take place between you and your cousins, we have settled that Khandava Prastha should be your abode. Therefore, go ye, casting off all jealousy, to Khandava Prastha, which contain many towns served by many broad roads, for dwelling there. And accordingly the Pandavas went, with all their friends and followers, to Khandava Prastha, taking with them many jewels and precious stones. And the sons of Pritha dwelt there for many years. And they brought, by force of arms, many a prince under their subjection. And thus, setting their hearts on virtue and firmly adhering to truth, unruffled by affluence, calm in deportment, and putting down numerous evils, the Pandavas gradually rose to power. And Bhima of great reputation subjugated the east, the heroic Arjuna, the north, Nakula, the west, Satdeva, that slayer of all hostile heroes, the south. And having done this, their dominations was spread over the whole world. And with the 5 Pandavas, each like unto the sun, the earth looked as if she had 6 suns. Then, for some reason, Yudhishthira the just, gifted with great energy and prowess, sent his brother Arjuna, who was capable of drawing the bow with the left hand, dearer unto him than life itself, into the woods. And Arjuna, that tiger among men, of firm soul, and gifted with every virtue, lived in the woods for 11 years and months. And during this period, on certain occasion, Arjuna went to Krishna in Dwaravati. And Vibhatsu, Arjuna, they obtained for a wife the lotus-eyed and sweet-speeched younger sister of Vasudeva, Subhadra by name. And she became united, in gladness, with Arjuna, the son of Pandu like Sachi with the great Indra, or Shri with Krishna himself. And then, O best of monarchs, Arjuna, the son of Kunti, with Vasudeva, gratified Agni, the carrier of the sacrificial butter, in the forest of Kandava, by burning the medicinal plants in that woods to cure Agni of his indigestion. And to Arjuna, assisted as he was by Keswa, the task did not at all appear heavy, even as nothing is heavy to Vishnu with immense design and resources in the matter of destroying his enemies. And Agni gave unto the son of Pritha the excellent bow Gandiva and a quiver that was inexhaustible, and a war chariot bearing the figure of Garuda on its standard. And it was on this occasion that Arjuna relieved the great Asura, Maya, from fear of being consumed in the fire. And Maya, in gratitude, built, for the Pandavas, a celestial palace decked with every sort of jewels and precious stones. And the wicked Duryodhana, beholding that building, was tempted with the desire of possessing it. And deceiving Yudhishthira by means of the dice played through the bands of the son of Suvala, Duryodhana sent the Pandavas into the woods for 12 years and 1 additional year to be passed in concealment, thus making the period full 13. And on the 14th year, O monarch, when the Pandavas returned and claimed their property, they did not obtain it. And thereupon war was declared, and the Pandavas, after extermination the whole race of Kshatriyas and slaying King Duryodhana, obtained back their devastated kingdom. This is the history of the Pandavas who never acted under the influence of evil passions, and this the account of first of victorious monarchs, of the disunion that ended in the loss of their kingdom by the Kurus and the victory of the Pandavas. So ends the 61st section in the Adivnasavatrana Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adiparva, section 62, Adivnasavatrana Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O excellent of Brahmanas, thou hast, indeed, told me, in brief, the history, called Mahabharat, of the great acts of the Kurus. But, O thou of ascetic wealth, recite now that wonderful narration fully. I feel a great curiosity to hear it. It behoveth thee to recite it, therefore, in full. I am not satisfied with hearing in a nutshell the great history. That could never have been a trifling cause for which the virtuous ones could slay those whom they should not have slain, and for which they are yet applauded by men. Why also did those tigers among men, innocent and capable of avenging themselves upon their enemies, calmly suffer the persecution of the wicked Kurus? Why also, O best of Brahmanas, did Bhima of mighty arms and of the strength of 10,000 elephants, control his anger, though wronged? Why also did the chaste Krishna, the daughter of Drupta, wronged by those wretches and able to burn them, not burn the sons of Dhritarashtra with her wrathful eyes? Why also did the 2 other sons of Pritha, Bhima and Arjuna, and the 2 sons of Madri, Nakula and Sahdeva, themselves injured by the wretched Kurus, follow Yudhishthira who was greatly addicted to the evil habit of gambling? Why also did Yudhishthira, that foremost of all virtuous men, the son of Dharma himself, fully acquainted with all duties, suffer that excess of affliction? Why also did the Pandav Dhananjaya, having Krishna for his charioteer, who by his arrows sent to the other world that dauntless host of fighting men, suffers such persecution. O thou of ascetic wealth, tell me all these as everything happened, and everything that those mighty charioteers achieved. Vasampayana said, O monarch, appoint thou a time for hearing it. This history told by Krishna-Dwaipayana is very extensive. This is but the beginning. I shall recite it. I shall repeat the whole of the composition in full, of the illustrious and great Rishi Vyasa of immeasurable mental power, and worshipped in all the worlds. This Bharata consists of 100,000 sacred slokas composed by the son of Satyavati, of immeasurable mental power. He that reads it to others, and they that hear it read, attain to the world of Brahman and become equal to the very goods. This Bharata is equal unto the Vedas, is holy and excellent, is the worthiest of all to be listened to, and is a Purana worshipped by the Risvas. It contains much useful instruction on art, dharma and kama, profit and pleasure. This sacred history maketh the heart desire for salvation. Learned persons by reciting this Veda of Krishna-Dwaipayana to those that are liberal, truthful and believing, earn much wealth. Sins such as killing the embryo in the womb are destroyed assuredly by this. A person, however cruel and sinful, by hearing this history, escapes from all his sins like the sun from Rahu, after the eclipse is over. This history is called Jaya. It should be heard by those desirous of victory. A king by hearing it may bring the whole world under subjection and conquer all his foes. This history in itself is a mighty act of propitiation, a mighty sacrifice productive of blessed fruit. It should always be heard by a young monarch with his queen, for then they beget a heroic son or a daughter to occupy a throne. This history is the high and sacred science of dharma, artha, and also of moksha. It hath been so said by Vyasa himself of mind that is immeasurable. This history is recited in the present age and will be recited in the future. They that hear it read, have sons and servants always obedient to them and doing their behests. All sins that are committed by body, word, or mind, immediately leave them that hear this history. They who hear, without the spirit of fault-finding, the story of the birth of the Bharata princes, can have no fear of maladies, let alone the fear of the other world. For extending the fame of the high-souled Pandavas and of other Kshatriyas versed in all branches of knowledge, high-spirited, and already known in the world for their achievements, Krishna-Dwaipayana, guided also by the desire of doing good to the world, hath composed this work. It is excellent, productive of fame, grants length of life, is sacred and heavenly. Age 3 who, from desire of acquiring religious merit, causeth this history to be heard by sacred Brahmanas acquireth great merit and virtue that is inexhaustible. He that reciteth the famous generation of the Kurus becometh immediately purified, and acquireth a large family himself, and becometh respected in the world. That Brahmana who regularly studies this sacred Bhikaratha for the 4 months of the rainy season, is cleansed from all his sins. He that has read the Bharata may be regarded as one acquainted with the Vedas. This work presents an account of the gods and royal sages and sacred regenerate rishis, the sinless Kesava, the god of gods, Mahadev and the goddess Parvati, the birth of Kartikeya who sprang from union of Parvati with Mahadev and was reared by many mothers, etc. greatness of Brahmanas and of kin. This Bharata is a collection of all the Shrutis, and is fit to be heard by every virtuous person. That learned man who reciteth it to Brahmanas during the sacred lunations, becometh cleansed of all sins, and, not caring for heaven as it were, attaineth to a union with Brahma. He that causeth even a single foot of this poem to be heard by Brahmanas during the performance of a Shraddha, maketh that Shraddha inexhaustible, the Pitris becoming ever gratified with the articles once presented to them. The sins that are committed daily by our senses or the mind, those that are committed knowingly or unknowingly by any man, are all destroyed by hearing the Mahabharat. The history of the exalted birth of the Bharata princes is called the Mahabharat. He who notes this etymology of the name is cleansed of all his sins. And as this history of the Bharata race is so wonderful, that, when recited, it assuredly purified mortals from all sins. The sage Krishna-Dwaipayana completed his work in 3 years. Rising daily and purifying himself and performing his ascetic devotions, he composed this Mahabharat. Therefore, this should be heard by Brahmanas with the formality of a vow. He who reciteth this holy narration composed by Krishna, Vyasa, for the hearing of others, and they who hear it, in whatever state he or they may be, can never be affected by the fruit of deeds good or bad. The man desirous of acquiring virtue should hear it all. This is equivalent to all histories, and he that heareth it always attaineth to purity of heart. The gratification that one deriveth from attaining to heaven is scarcely equal to that which one deriveth from hearing this holy history. The virtuous man who with reverence heareth it or causeth it to be heard, obtaineth the fruit of the Rajpuva and the horse sacrifice. The Bharata is said to be as much a mine of gems as the illustrious ocean or the great mountain Meru. This history is sacred and excellent, and is equivalent to the Vedas, worthy of being heard, pleasing to the ear, sin cleansing, and virtue increasing. O monarch, he that giveth a copy of the Bharata to one that asketh for it doth indeed make a present of the whole earth with her belt of seas. O son of Parikshit, this pleasant narration that giveth virtue and victory I am about to recite in its entirety, listen to it. The sage Krishna-Dwaipayana, regularly rising for 3 years, composed this wonderful history called Mahabharat. O bull amongst the Bharata monarchs, whatever spoken of about virtue, wealth, pleasure, and salvation may be seen elsewhere, but whatever is not contained in this is not to be found anywhere. So ends the 62nd section in the Adivnasavtana Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adiparva, section 63, Adivnasavattrana Parva continued. Vasampayana said, there was a king of the name of Uparikra. That monarch was devoted to virtue. He was very much addicted also to hunting. That king of the Parava race, called also Vasu, conquered the excellent and delightful kingdom of Chedi under instructions from Indra. Some time after, the king gave up the use of arms and, dwelling in a secluded retreat, practiced the most severe austerities. The gods with Indra at their head once approached the monarch during this period, believing that he sought the headship of the gods by those severe austerities of his. The celestials, becoming objects of his sight, by soft speeches succeeded in winning him away from his ascetic austerities. The gods said, O Lord of earth, thou shouldst take care so that virtue may not sustain a diminution on earth. Protected by thee, virtue itself will in return protect the universe. And Indra said, O king, protect virtue on earth attentively and rigidly, one being virtuous, thou shalt, for all time, behold, in afterlife, many sacred regions. And though I am of heaven, and thou art of earth, yet art thou my friend and dear to me. And, O king of men, dwell thou in that region on earth which is delightful, and aboundeth in animals, is sacred, full of wealth and corn, is well protected like heaven, which is of agreeable climate, graced with every object of enjoyment, and blessed with fertility. And, O monarch of Chedi, this thy dominion is full of riches, of gems and precious stones, and containeth, besides, much mineral wealth. The cities and towns of this region are all devoted to virtue, the people are honest and contented, they never lie even in jest. Sons never divide their wealth with their fathers and are ever mindful of the welfare of their parents. Lean cattle are never yoked to the plough or the cart or engaged in carrying merchandise, on the other hand, they are well fed and fattened. In Chedi, or reverencer of the gods and guests, the four orders are always engaged in their respective vocations. Let nothing be unknown to thee that happens in the three worlds. I shall give thee a crystal car such as the celestials alone are capable of carrying the car through mid-air. Thou alone, of all mortals on earth, riding on that best of cars, shalt course through mid-air like a celestial endued with a physical frame. I shall also give thee a triumphal garland of unfading lotuses, with which on, in battle, thou shalt not be wounded by weapons. And, O King, this blessed and incomparable garland, widely known on earth as Indra's garland, shall be thy distinctive badge. The slayer of Vritra, Indra, also gave the king, for his gratification, a bamboo pole for protecting the honest and the peaceful. After the expiration of a year, the king planted it in the ground for the purpose of worshipping the giver thereof, viz. Sakya. From that time forth, O monarch, all kings, following Vasu's example, began to plant a pole for the celebration of Indra's worship. After erecting the pole, they deck it with golden cloth and scents and garlands and various ornaments. And the god Vasva is worshipped in due form with such garlands and ornaments. And the god, for the gratification of the illustrious Vasu, assuming the form of a swan, came himself to accept the worship thus offered. And the god, viz., the great Indra, beholding the auspicious worship thus made by Vasu, that first of monarchs, was delighted, and said unto him, those men, and kings also, who will worship me and joyously observe this festival of mine like the king of Chedi, shall have glory and victory for their countries and kingdom. Their cities also shall expand and be ever in joy. King Vasu was thus blessed by the gratified Magvat, the high-soiled chief of the gods. Indeed, those men who cause this festivity of Sakra to be observed with gifts of land, of gems and precious stones, become the respected of the world. And King Vasu, the lords of Chedis bestowing boons and performing great sacrifices and observing the festivity of Sakra, was much respected by Indra. And from Chedi he ruled the whole world virtuously. And for the gratification of Indra, Vasu, the lord of the Chedis, observed the festivity of Indra. And Vasu had 5 sons of great energy and immeasurable prowess. And the emperor installed his sons as governors of various provinces. 41 And his son Vrihadratha was installed in Magad and was known by the name of Mahatha. Another son of his was Pratyagraha, and another, Kusamvan, who was also called Manivarna. And the 2 others were Mavela, and Yadu of great prowess and invincible in battle. These, O monarch, were the sons of that royal sage of mighty energy. And the 5 sons of Vasu planted kingdoms and towns after their own names and founded separate dynasties that lasted for long ages. And when King Vasu took his seat in that crystal car, with the gift of Indra, and coursed through the sky, he was approached by Gandharvas and Apsaras, the celestial singers and dancers. And as he coursed through the upper regions, he was called Uparikra. and by his capital flowed a river called Suktimeti. And that river was once attacked by a life-endued mountain called Kolalala, maddened by lust. And Vasu, beholding the foul attempt, struck the mountain with his foot. And by the indentation caused by Vasu's stamp, the river came out of the embraces of Kolalala. But the mountain begat on the river two children that were twins. And the river, grateful to Vasu for his having set her free from Kolalala's embraces, gave them both to Vasu. And the child that was made the generalissimo to his forces by Vasu, that best of royal sages and giver of wealth and punisher of enemies. And the daughter, called Girika, was wived by Vasu. And Girika, the wife of Vasu, after her menstrual course, purifying herself by a bath, represented her state unto her lord. But that very day the Pitris of Vasu came unto that best of monarchs and foremost of wise men, and asked him to slay deer, for their Sraddha. And the king, thinking that the command of the Pitris should not be disobeyed, went a-hunting, wishfully thinking of Girika alone, who was gifted with great beauty and like unto another Shri herself. And the season being the spring, the woods within which the king was roaming, had become delightful like unto the gardens of the king of the Gandharvas himself. There were Asokas and Champakas and Chutas and Atimukras in abundance, and there were Pannagas and Karnikras and Vakulas and Divyapatalas and Patalas and Narikalas and Chandnas and Arjunas and similar other beautiful and sacred trees resplendent with fragrant flowers and sweet fruits. And the whole forest was maddened by the sweet notes of the kokila and echoed with the hum of maddened bees. And the king became possessed with desire, and he saw not his wife before him maddened by desire as he was roaming hither and thither. He saw a beautiful asoka decked with dense foliage and its branches covered with flowers. And the king sat at his ease in the shade of that tree. And excited by the fragrance of the season and the charming odors of the flowers around, and excited also by the delicious breeze, the king could not keep his mind away from the thought of the beautiful Girika. And beholding that a swift hawk was resting very near to him, the king, acquainted with the subtle truths of dharma and artha, went unto him and said, Amiable one, carry thou this seed, semen, for my wife Girika, and give it unto her. Her season hath arrived. The hawk, swift of speed, took it from the king and rapidly coursed through the air. While thus passing, the hawk was seen by another of his species. Thinking that the first one was carrying meat, the second one flew at him. The two fought with each other in the sky with their beak. While they were fighting, the seed fell into the waters of the Jamna. And in those waters dwelt an Apsara of the higher ranks, known by the name of Adrika, transformed by a Brahmana's curse into a fish. Adrika, transformed into a fish, as soon as Vasu's seed fell into the water from the claws of the hawk, rapidly approached and swallowed it at once. That fish was, some time after, caught by the fishermen. And it was the 10th month of the fishes having swallowed the seed. From the stomach of that fish came out a male and female child of human form. The fishermen wondered much, and wending unto King Aprarachara, for they were his subjects, told him all. They said, O king, these two beings of human shape have been born in the body of fish. The male child amongst the two was taken by Uparikra. That child afterwards became the virtuous and truthful monarch Matsya. After the birth of the twins, the Apsara herself became freed from her curse. For she had been told before by the illustrious one, who had cursed her, that she would, while living in her piscatorial form, give birth to two children of human shape and then would be freed from the curse. Then, According to these words, having given birth to the two children, and been slain by the fishermen, she left her fish form and assumed her own celestial shape. The Apsara then rose up on the path trodden by the Siddhas, the Rishis and the Charanas. The fish-smelling daughter of the Apsara in her piscatorial form was then given by the king unto the fisherman, saying, "Let this one be thy daughter." That girl was known by the name of Satyavati. And gifted with great beauty and possessed of every virtue, she of agreeable smiles, owing to contact with fishermen, was for some time of the fishy smell. Wishing to serve her foster father, she plied a boat on the waters of the Yamuna. While engaged in this vocation, Satyavati was seen one day by the great Rishi Parasara, in course of his wanderings. Gifted with great beauty, an object of desire even with an anchorite, and of graceful smiles, the wise sage, as soon as he beheld her, desired to have her. And that bull amongst Munis addressed the daughter of Vasu of celestial beauty and tapering thighs, saying, "Accept my embraces, O blessed one." V. Satyavati replied, "O holy one, behold the rishis standing on either bank of the river. Seen by them, how can I grant thy wish?" Thus addressed by her, the illustrious Lord thereupon created a fog, which existed not before and which enveloped the whole region in darkness. And the maiden, beholding the fog that was created by the great Risim, wondered much. And the helpless one became suffused with the blushes of bashfulness. And she said, "To Holy One, know that I am a maiden under the control of my father. O sinless one, by accepting your embraces my virginity will be solid. O best of Brahmanas, my virginity being solid, how shall I, O Rishi, be able to return home? Indeed, I shall not then be able to bear life." One reflecting upon all this, "O illustrious one, do that which should be done." P. That best of Rishis, gratified with all she said, replied, "Thou shalt remain a virgin even if Toti grantest my wish. And, O timid one, O beauteous lady, solicit the boon that thou desirest. O thou fair smiles, my grace hath never before proved fruitless." Thus addressed, the maiden asked for the boon that her body might emit a sweet scent, instead of the fish odor that it had. And the illustrious Rishi thereupon granted that wish of her heart. Having obtained her boon, she became highly pleased, and her season immediately came. And she accepted the embraces of that Rishi of wonderful deeds. And she thenceforth became known among men by name of Gandhavati, the sweet-scented one. And men could perceive her scent from the distance of a yojna. And for this she was known by another name, which was Yojnagandha, one who scatters her scent for a yojna all around. And the illustrious Parasara, after this, went to his own asylum. And Satyavati, gratified with having obtained the excellent boon, in consequence of which she became sweet-scented and her virginity remained unsullied, conceived through Parasara's embraces. And she brought forth the very day, on an island in the Yamuna, the child begot upon her by Parasara and gifted with great energy. And the child, with the permissive ion of his mother, set his mind on asceticism. And he went away saying, "As soon as thou rememberest me when occasion comes, I shall appear unto thee." And it was thus that Vyasa was born of Satyavati through Parasara. And because he was born in an island, he was called Dwaipayana, Dwaipa or island born. And the learned Dwaipayana, beholding that virtue is destined to become lame by one leg each yuga, she having 4 legs in all, and that the period of life and the strength of men followed the yugas, and moved by the desire of obtaining the favor of Brahmana and the Brahmanas, arranged the Vedas. And for this he came to be called Vyasa, the arranger or compiler. The boon-giving great one then taught Sumanta, Gemini, Pela, his son Sukha, and Vasampayana, the Vedas having the Mahabharat for their fifth. And the compilation of the Bharata was published by him through them separately. Then Bhishma, of great energy and fame and of immeasurable splendor, and sprung from the component parts of the Vasis, was born in the womb of Ganga through King Santanu, and there was a rishi of the name of Animandavya of great fame. And he was conversant with the interpretations of the Vedas, was illustrious, gifted with great energy, and of great reputation. And, accused of theft, though innocent, the old rishi was impaled. He thereupon summoned Dharma and told him these words: "In my childhood I had pierced a little fly on a blade of grass, O Dharma, I recollect that one sin, but I cannot call to mind any other. I have, however, since practiced penances 1,000-fold. Hath not that one sin been conquered by this my asceticism? And because the killing of a Brahmana is more heinous than that of any other living thing, therefore, hast thou, O Dharma, been sinful. Thou shalt, therefore, be born on earth in the Sudra order." And for that curse Dharma was born a Sudra in the form of the learned Vidura of pure body who was perfectly sinless. And the Sutha was born of Kunti in her maidenhood through Saurya. And he came out of his mother's womb with a natural coat of mail and face brightened by earrings. And Vishnu himself, of worldwide fame, and worshipped of all the worlds, was born of Devaki through Vasudeva, for the benefit of the three worlds. He is without birth and death, of radiant splendor, the creator of the universe and the Lord of all. Indeed, he who is the invisible cause of all, who knoweth no deterioration, who is the all-pervading soul, the center round which everything moveth, the substance in which the three attributes of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas cohere, the universal soul, the immutable, the material out of which hath been created this universe, the Creator himself, the controlling Lord, the invisible dweller in every object, progenitor of this universe of 5 elements, who is united with the 6 high attributes, is the Pranav or of the Vedas, is infinite, incapable of being moved by any force save his own will, illustrious, the embodiment of the mode of life called sannyasa, who floated on the waters before the creation, who is the source whence hath spun this mighty frame, who is the great combiner, the increate, the invisible essence of all, the great immutable, is bereft of those attributes that are knowable by the senses, who is the universe itself, without beginning, birth, and decay, is possessed of infinite wealth, that grandsire of all creatures, became incarnate in the race of the Andhaka Vrishnis for the increase of virtue. And Satyaki and Kritavarma, conversant with the use of weapons, possessed of mighty energy, well versed in all branches of knowledge, and obedient to Narayana in everything and competent in the use of weapons, had their births from Satyak and Hridika. And the seed of the great Rishi Bharadwaja of severe penances, kept in a pot, begat to develop. And from that seed came Drona, the pot-born. And from the seed of Gautama, fallen upon a clump of reeds, were born 2 that were twins, the mother of Aswathaman, called Kripi, and Kripa of great strength. Then was born Drishtadayumna, of the splendor of Agni himself, from the sacrificial fire. And the mighty hero was born with bow in hand for the destruction of Drona. And from the sacrificial altar was born Krishna, Draupadi, resplendent and handsome, of bright features and excellent beauty. Then was born the disciple of Prahlad, 6-Nagnajit, and also Suvala. And from Suvala was born a son Sakuni, who from the curse of the gods became the slayer of creatures and the foe of virtue. And unto him was also born a daughter, Gandhari, the mother of Duryodhana. And both were well versed in the acquisition of worldly profits. And from Krishna was born, in the soil of Vichitravirya, Dhritarashtra, the lord of men, and Pandu of great strength. And from Dwaipayana also born, in the Sudra caste, the wise and intelligent Vidura, conversant with both religion and profit, and free from all sins. And unto Pandu by his 2 wives were born 5 sons like the celestials. The eldest of them was Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira was born, of the seed, of Dharma, Yam, the god of justice, and Bhima of the wolf's stomach was born of Marut, the god of wind, and Dhananjaya, blessed with good fortune and the first of all wielders of weapons, was born of Indra, and Nakula and Sahdeva, of handsome features and ever engaged in the service of their superiors, were born of the twin Aswins. And unto the wise Dhritarashtra were born 100 sons, viz. Duryodhan and others, and another, named Yuyutsu, who was born of a Vaisya woman. And amongst those, 111, Dasashnana, Dasaha, Dumarshana, Vikarn, Chitrasena, Vivingseti, Jaya, Satyavarta, Purumitra, and Yuyutsu by a Vaisya wife, were all Maharathas, great car warriors. And Abhimanyu was born of Subhadra, the sister of Vasudeva through Arjuna, and was, therefore, the grandson of the illustrious Pandu. And unto the 5 Pandavas were born 5 sons by their common wife, Panchali. And these princes were all very handsome and conversant with all branches of knowledge. From Yudhishthira was born Prithivindra, from Vrikodra, Sutasoma, from Arjuna, Srutakirti, from Nikula Satanika, and from Sahdeva, Shrutasena of great prowess, and Bhima, in the forest begat on Hidimban a son named Katotkacha. And from Drupta was born a daughter Sikhindin, who was afterwards transformed into a male child. And Sikhnadini was so transformed into a male by Yajksha named Stuna from the desire of doing her good. In that great battle of the Kurus came hundreds of thousands of monarchs for fighting against one another. The names of that innumerable host I am unable to recount even in 10,000 years. I have named, however, the principal ones who have been mentioned in this history. So ends the 63rd section in the Adivnasavatrana Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adiparva, section 64, Adivnasavatrana Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O Brahmana, those thou liest named and those thou hast not named, I wish to hear of in detail, as also of other kings by thousands. And, O thou of great good fortune, it behoveth thee to tell me in full the object for which those Maharathas, equal unto the celestials themselves, were born on earth. Vasampayana said, It hath been heard by us, O monarch, that what thou askest is a mystery even to the gods. I shall, however, speak of it unto thee, after bowing down, to the self-born. The son of Jamdagni, Parsurma, after 21 times making the earth bereft of Kshatriyas, wended to that best of mountains Mahendra, and there began his ascetic penances. And at that time when the earth was bereft of Kshatriyas, the Kshatriya ladies, desirous of offspring, used to come, O monarch, to the Brahmanas, and Brahmanas of rigid vows had connection with them during the womanly season alone, but never, O king, lustfully and out of season. And Kshatriya ladies by thousands conceived from such connection with Brahmanas. Then, O monarch, were born many Kshatriyas of greater energy, boys and girls, so that the Kshatriya race, might thrive. And thus sprung the Kshatriya race from Kshatriya ladies by Brahmanas of ascetic penances. And the new generation, blessed with long life, began to thrive in virtue. And thus were the four orders having Brahmanas at their head re-established. And every man at that time went in unto his wife during her season, and never from lust and out of season. And O bull of the Bharata race, in the same way, other creatures also, even those born in the race of birds, went in unto their wives during the season alone. And, O protector of the earth, hundreds of thousands of creatures were born, and all were virtuous and began to multiply in virtue, all being free from sorrow and disease. And, O thou of the elephant's tread, this wide earth having the ocean for her boundaries, with her mountains and woods and towns, was once more governed by the Kshatriyas. And when the earth began to be again governed virtuously by the Kshatriyas, the other orders having Brahmanas for their first were filled with great joy. And the kings, giving up all vices born of lust and anger, and justly awarding punishments to those that deserved them, protected the earth. And he of 100 sacrifices, possessed also of 1,000 eyes, beholding that the Kshatriya monarchs ruled so virtuously, poured down vivifying showers at proper times and places, and blessed all creatures. Then, O king, no one of immature years died, and none knew a woman before attaining to age. And thus, O bull of the Bharata race, the earth, to the very shores of the ocean, became filled with men that were all long-lived. The Kshatriyas performed great sacrifices, bestowing much wealth. And the Brahmins also all studied the Vedas with their branches and Upanishads. And, O king, no Brahmana in those days ever sold the Vedas, i.e., taught for money, or ever read aloud the Vedas in the presence of a Sudra. The Vaisyas, with the help of bullocks, caused the earth to be tilled. And they never yoked the cattle themselves. And they fed with care all cattle that were lean. And men never milked kine as long as the calves drank only the milk of their dams, without having taken to grass or any other food. And no merchant in those days ever sold his articles by false scales. And O tiger among men, all persons, holding to the ways of virtue, did everything with eyes set upon virtue. And, O monarch, all the orders were mindful of their own respective duties. Thus, O tiger among men, virtue in those days never sustained any diminution. And, O bull of the Bharata race, both kin and women gave birth to their offspring at the proper time. And trees bore flowers and fruits duly according to the seasons. And thus, O king, the Krita age having then duly set in, the whole earth was filled with numerous creatures. And, O bull of the Bharata race, when such was the blessed state of terrestrial world, the Asuras, O lord of men, began to be born in kingly lines, and the sons of Diti, Daityas, being repeatedly defeated in war by the sons of Aditi, celestials, and deprived also of sovereignty and heaven, began to be incarnate on earth. And, O king, the Asuras, possessed of great powers, and desirous of sovereignty young men, began to be born on earth amongst various creatures such as kine, horses, asses, camels, buffaloes, among creatures such as Rakshasas and others, and in elephants and deer. And, O protector of the earth, owing to those already born and to those that were being born, the earth became incapable of supporting herself. And amongst the sons of Diti and of Danu, casting out of heaven, some were born on earth as kings of great pride and insolence. Possessed of great energy, they covered the earth in various shapes. Capable of oppressing all foes, they filled the earth, having the ocean for her boundaries. And by their strength they began to oppress Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaisyas and Sudras and all other creatures also, terrifying and killing all creatures. They traversed the earth, O king, in bands of hundreds and thousands, devoid of truth and virtue, proud of their strength, and intoxicated with the wine of insolence. They even insulted the great rishis in their asylums. And the earth, thus oppressed by the mighty Asuras, endued with great strength and energy and possessed of abundant means, began to think of waiting on Brahman. The united strength of the creatures, such as Sesha, the tortoise, and the huge elephant, and of many Seshas too, became capable of supporting the earth with her mountains, burdened as she was with the weight of the Danvas. And then, O king, the earth, oppressed with weight and afflicted with fear, sought the protection of the grandsire of all creatures. And she beheld the divine Brahman, the creator of the worlds, who knoweth no deterioration, surrounded by the gods, Brahmanas, and great rishis, of exceeding good fortune, and adored by delighted Gandharvas and Apsaras, always engaged in the service of the celestials. And the earth, desirous of protection, then represented everything to him, in the presence, O Bharata, of all the regents of the worlds. But O king, the earth's object had been known beforehand to the omniscient, self-create, and supreme Lord. And, O Bharata, creator as he is of the universe, why should he not know fully what is in the minds of his creatures, including the very gods and the Asuras? O king, the Lord of the earth, the creator of all creatures, also called Isa, Sambhu, Prajapati, then spake unto her. And Brahman said, O holder of wealth, for the accomplishment of the object for which thou hast approached me, I shall appoint all the dwellers in the heavens. Vasampayana continued, having said so unto the earth, O king, the divine Brahman bade her farewell. And the Creator then commanded all the gods, saying, to ease the earth of her burden, go ye and have your births in her according to your respective parts, and seek ye strife with the Asuras already born there. And the Creator of all, summoning also all the tribes of the Gandharvas and the Apsaras, spake unto them these words of deep import. Go ye and be born amongst men according to your respective parts in forms that ye like. And all the gods with Indra, on hearing these words of the Lord of the celestials, words that were true, desirable under the circumstances, and fraught with benefit, accepted them. And they all, having resolved to come down on earth in their respected parts, then went to Narayana, the slayer of all foes, at Vaikuntha, he who has the discus and the make in his hands, who is clad in purple, who is of great splendor, who hath the lotus on his navel, who is the slayer of the foes of the gods, who is of eyes looking down upon his wide chest, in yoga attitude, who is the Lord of the Prajapati himself, the sovereign of all the gods, of mighty strength, who hath the mark of the auspicious world on his breast, who is the mover of every one's faculties, and who is adored by all the gods. Him, Indra, the most exalted of persons, addressed, saying, Be incarnate. And Hari replied, Let it be. So ends the 64th section in the Adivnasavatranab Parva of the Adiparva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adiparva, section 65, Sambhava Parva. Vasampayana said, Then Indra had a consultation with Narayana about the Tactor's descent on earth from heaven with all the gods according to their respective parts. And, having commanded all the dwellers in heaven, Indra returned from the abode of Narayana. And the dwellers in heaven gradually became incarnate on earth for the destruction of the Asuras and for the welfare of the three worlds. And then, O tiger among kings, the celestials had their births, according as they pleased, in the races of Brahmarshis and royal sages. And they slew the Danvas, Rakshasas, Gandharvas and snakes, other man-eaters, and many other creatures. And, O bull in the Bharata race, the Danvas, Rakshasas and Gandharvas and snakes, could not slay the incarnate celestials even in their infancy, so strong they were. Janamejaya said, I desire to hear from the beginning of the births of the Ds, the Danvas, the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, men, Yakshas and Rakshasas. Therefore, it behoveth thee to tell me about the births of all creatures. Vasampayana said, Indeed, I shall, having bowed down to the self-create, tell thee in detail the origin of the celestials and other creatures. It is known that Brahma hath 6 spiritual sons, viz., Marichi, Atri, Angiras, Pulastya, Pulaha, and Kratu. And Marika's son is Kasyapa, and from Kasyapa have sprung these creatures. Unto Daksha, Jain of the Prajapatis, were born 13 daughters of great good fortune. The daughters of Daksha are, O tiger among men and prince of the Bharata race, Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kala, Danu, Sinhika, Krodha, Prada, Viswa, Vinta, Kapila, Muni, and Kadru. The sons and grandsons of these, gifted with great energy, are infinite. From Aditi have sprung the 12 Adityas who are the lords of the universe. And, O Bharata, as they are according to their names, I shall recount them to thee. They are Dhatri, Mitra, Ayaman, Sakra, Varuna, Ansa, Ved, Vivaswat, Usha, Savitri, Tashtri, and Vishnu. The youngest, however, is superior to them all in merit. Diti had one son called Hiranyakasipu, and the illustrious Hiranyakasipu had 5 sons, all famous throughout the world. The eldest of them all was Prahlad, the next was Sangaradha, the third was Anuhrada, and after him were Sivi and Vashkala. And, O Bharata, it is known everywhere that Prahlad had 3 sons. They were Virochna, Kumbha, and Nikumbha. And unto Virochna was born a son, Vali of great prowess. And the son of Vali is known to be the great Asura one. And blessed with good fortune, once was a follower of Rudra, and was known also by the name of Mahakala, and Danu had 40 sons, O Bharata. The eldest of them all was Viprachati of great fame. Samvara, and Namuchi, and Poloman, Asiloman, and Kesi and Dojal, Ayasiras, Ashvasiras, and the powerful Ashvasanku, also Gaganamargan, and Vegavat, and he called Ketumat, Swarbhanu, Asv, Ashvapati, Vrishpavan, and then Ajka, and Aswagriva, and Sukshama, and Tuhanda of great strength, Ekpada, and Ekachakra, Virupaksh, Mahodra, and Nichandra, and Nikumbha, Kupata, and then Kapta, Sarabha, and Sulabha, Surya, and then Chandramas. These in the race of Danu are stated to be well known. The Surya and Chandramas, the sun and the moon, of the celestials are other persons, and not the sons of Danu as mentioned above. The following 10, gifted with great strength and vigor, were also, O king, born in the race of Danu, Ekaksha, Amritapha of heroic courage, Pralamban and Nirka, Vatrapi, Satritpana, and Satha the great Asura, Gavishta, and Vanayu, and the Danva called Dirgajiva. And, O Bharata, the sons and the grandsons of these were known to be countless. And Singika gave birth to Rahu, the persecutor of sun and the moon, and to 3 others, Suchandra, Chandrahantri, and Chandrapramardana, and the countless progeny of Krura, Krodha, were as much crooked and wicked as herself. And the tribe was wrathful, of crooked deeds, and persecutors of their foes. And Danu also had 4 sons who were bulls among the Asuras. They were Vikshara, Vala, Veera, and Vritra the great Asura. And the sons of Kala were all like Yam himself and smites of all foes. And they were of great energy, and oppressor of all foes. And the sons of Kala were Vinasana and Krodha, and then Krodhahantri, and Krodhsatru. And there were many others among the sons of Kala. And Sukra, the son of a rishi, was the chief priest of the Asuras. And the celebrated Sukra had 4 sons who were priests of the Asuras. And they were Tashtadhra and Atri, and 2 others of fierce deeds. They were like the sun himself in energy, and set their hearts on acquiring the regions of Brahman. Thus hath been recited by me, as heard in the Purana, of progeny of the gods and the Asuras, both of great strength and energy. I am incapable, O king, of counting the descendants of these, countless as they are not much known to fame. And the sons of Vinta were Takyanda Arishtanimi, and Garuda and Aruna, and Aruni and Varuni. And Sesha or Ananta, Vasuki, Takshaka, Kumara, and Kulika are known to be the sons of Kadru, and Bhimsena, Ugrasena, Suparna, Varuna, Gopati, and Dhritarashtra, and Sulyavachas the 7th, Satyavachas, Akaparna, Prayuta, Bhima, and Chitraratha, known to fame, of great learning, and a controller of his passions, and then Kalisiras, and, O king, Perjanya, the 14th in the list, Kali, the 15th, and Narda, the 16th. These Devas and Gandharvas are known to be the sons of Muni, Daksha's daughter, as mentioned before. I shall recount many others, O Bharata. Anavadya Manu, Vansa, Asurai Merganapriya, Anupa, Sugha, Vasi, were the daughters brought forth by Prada, Siddha, and Purna, and Vareen, and Purnayus of great fame, Brahmacharin, Ratiguna, and Suparna, who was the 7th, Viswavasu, Bhanu, and Suchandra, who was the 10th, were also the sons of Prada. All these were celestials, Gandharvas. And it is also known that this Prada of great god fortune, through the celestial Rishi, Kasyapa her husband, brought forth the sacred of the Apsaras, Alamvusha, Misraksi, Vidyupana, Tilottama, Aruna, Rakshita, Ramba, Manorma, Kesini, Suvau, Surata, Suraja, and Supriya were the daughters, and Ativau and the celebrated Haha and Huhu, and Tamburu were the sons, the best of Gandharvas of Prada and Amrita. The Brahmanas, kin, Gandharvas, and Apsaras, were born of Kapila, as stated in the Purana. Thus hath been recited to thee by me the birth of all creatures duly of Gandharvas and Apsaras, of snakes, Suparnas, Rudras, and Marups, of kin and of Brahmanas blessed with great good fortune, and of sacred deeds. And this account, if read, extendeth the period of life, is sacred, worthy of all praise, and giveth pleasure to the ear. It should be always heard and recited to others, in a proper frame of mind. He who duly readeth this account of the birth of all high-souled creatures in the presence of the gods and Brahmanas, obtaineth large progeny, good fortune, and fame, and attaineth also to excellent worlds hereafter. So ends the 65th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 66, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, it is known that the spiritual sons of Brahman were the 6 great rishis, already mentioned. There was another of the name of Sthanu. And the sons of Stanu gifted with great energy were, it is known, 11. They were Mrigayadha, Serpa, Niriti of great fame, Ajayikapat, Ahivradna, and Pinaki the oppressor of foes, Dahana and Iswara, and Kapali of great splendor, and Stanu, and the illustrious Bharga. These are called the 11 Rudras. It hath been already said, that Marichi, Angiras, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, and Kratu, these 6 great rishis of great energy, are the sons of Brahman. It is well known in the world that Angiras' sons are 3, Vrihaspati, Uttatya, and Samvarta, all of rigid vows. And, O king, it is said that the sons of Atri are numerous. And, being great rishis, they are all conversant with the Vedas, crowned with ascetic success, and of souls in perfect peace. And, O tiger among kings, the sons of Pulastya of great wisdom are Rakshasas, monkeys, kinnaras, half-men and half-horses, and yakshas. And, O king, the son of Pulaha were, it is said, the Selvas, the winged insects, the lions, the Kimpurushas, half-lions and half-men, the tigers, bears, and wolves. And the sons of Kratu, sacred as sacrifices, are the companions of Surya, the Valikilyas, known in 3 worlds and devoted to truth and vows. And, O protector of the earth, the illustrious Rishi Daksha, of soul in complete peace, and of great asceticism, sprung from the right toe of Brahman. And from the left toe of Brahman sprang the wife of the high-souled Daksha. And the Muni begat upon her 50 daughters, and all those daughters were of faultless features and limbs and of eyes, like lotus petals, and the Lord Daksha, not having any sons, made those daughters his putrikas, so that their sons might belong both to himself and to their husbands. And Daksha bestowed, according to the sacred ordinance, 10 of his daughters on Dharma, 27 on Chandra, the moon, and 13 on Kasyapa. Listen as I recount the wives of Dharma according to their names. They are 10 in all: Kirti, Lakshmi, Dhriti, Medha, Pushti, Shraddha, Kriya, Buddhi, Lajja, and Mati. These are the wives of Dharma as appointed by the Self-Create. It is known also throughout the world that the wives of Soma, moon, are 27. And the wives of Soma, all of sacred vows, are employed in indicating time, and they are the Nakshatras and the Yoginis, and they became so for assisting the courses of the worlds. And Brahman had another son named Man. And Manu had a son of the name of Prajapati. And the sons of Prajapati were 8 and were called Vasis, whom I shall name in detail. They were Dhara, Dhruva, Soma, Aha, Anila, Anila, Pratyusha, and Prabhasa. These 8 are known as the Vasis. Of these, Dhara and the truth-knowing Dhruva were born of Dhumra, Chandramas, Soma, and Swasna. Anila were born of the intelligent Swasa. Aha was the son of Rata, and Hutasna, Anila, of Sandilya, and Pratyusha and Prabhasa were the sons of Prabhata. And Dhara had 2 sons, Dravina and Hutahavyavaya. And the son of Dhruva is the illustrious Kala, time, the destroyer of the worlds. And Soma's son is the resplendent Varchas. And Varchas begat upon his wife Manohara 3 sons, Sisira, and Ramana. And the son of Aha were Jyoti, Sama, Santa, and also Muni. And the son of Agni is the handsome Kumara born in a forest of reeds. And he is also called Kanikeya because he was reared by Kritika and others. And after Kartikeya, there were born his 3 brothers Sakha, Visakha, Nagamya. And the wife of Anila is Shiva, and Shiva's son were Manojwa and Avijnayatagati. These 2 were the sons of Anila. The son of Pratyusha, you must know, is the Ishi named Devala, and Devala had two sons who were both exceedingly forgiving and of great mental power. And the sister of Vrihaspati, the first of women, uttering the sacred truth, engaged in ascetic penances, roamed over the whole earth, and she became the wife of Prabhasa, the eighth Vasu. And she brought forth the illustrious Viswakarman, the founder of all arts. And he was originator of 1,000 arts, the engineer of the immortals, the maker of all kinds of ornaments, and the first of artists. And he it was who constructed the celestial cars of the gods, and mankind are enabled to live in consequence of the inventions of that illustrious one. And he is worshipped, for that reason, by men. And he is eternal and immutable, this Viswakarman. And the illustrious Dharm, the dispenser of all happiness, assuming a human countenance, came out through the right breast of Brahman. And Ahasta, Dharm, hath three excellent sons capable of charming every creature. And they are Sama, Kama, Harsha, peace, desire, and joy. And by their energy they are supporting the worlds. And the wife of Kama is Rati, of Sama is Prapti, and the wife of Harsha is Nanda. And upon them, indeed, are the worlds made to depend. And the son of Marichi Kasyapa. And Kasyapa's offspring are the gods and the Asuras. And, therefore, is Kasyapa, the father of the worlds. And Tashtri, of the form of Vadva, a mare, became the wife of Savitri. And she gave birth, in the skies, to two greatly fortunate twins, the Aswins. And, O king, the sons of Aditi are 12 with Indra heading them all. And the youngest of them all was Vishnu upon whom the worlds depend. These are the 33 gods, the 8 Vasis, the 11 Rudras, the 12 Adityas, Prajapati, and Vashakara. I shall now recount their progeny according to their Pakshas, Kulas, and Ganas. The Rudras, the Sagdayas, the Maruts, the Vasis, the Bhargavas, and the Viswadevas are each reckoned as a Paksh. Garuda the son of Vinta and the mighty Aruna also, and the illustrious Vrihaspati are reckoned among the Adityas. The twin Aswins, all annual plants, and all inferior animals, are reckoned among the Guhayakas. These are the ganas of the gods recited to thee, O king. This recitation washes men of all sins. The illustrious Bhrigu came out, ripping open the breast of Brahman. The learned Sukra is Bhrigu's son. And the learned Sukra, becoming a planet and engaged according to the command of the self-existent in pouring and withholding rain, and in dispensing and remitting calamities, traverses, for sustaining the lives of all the creatures in the three worlds, through the skies. And the learned Sukra, of great intelligence and wisdom, of rigid vows, leading the life of a brahmacharin, divided himself in twain by power of asceticism, and became the spiritual guide of both the Daityas and the gods. And after Sukra was thus employed by Brahman in seeking the welfare of the gods and the Asuras, Bhrigu begat another excellent son. This was Chavna, who was like the blazing sun, of virtuous soul, and of great fame. And he came out of his mother's womb in anger, and became the cause of his mother's release, O king, from the hands of the Rakshasas. And Arishi, the daughter of Manu, became the wife of the wise Chavna. And, on her was begat Orva of great reputation. And he came out, ripping open the thigh of Arishi. And Orva begat Richika. And Richika even in his boyhood became possessed of great power and energy, and of every virtue. And Richika begat Jamdagni. And the high-souled Jamdagni had 4 sons. And the youngest of them all was Rama, Parsurma. And Rama was superior to all his brothers in the possession of good qualities. And he was skillful in all weapons, and became the slayer of the Kshatriyas. And he had his passions under complete control. And Aurva had the 100 sons with Jamdagni the eldest. And these 100 sons had offspring by thousands spread over this earth. And Brahman had 2 other sons, viz. Dhatri and Vidhatri, who stayed with Manu. Their sister is the auspicious Lakshmi, having her abode amid lotuses. And the spiritual sons of Lakshmi are the sky-ranging horses. And the daughter born of Sukra, named Devi, became the eldest wife of Varuna. Of her were born a son named Vala and a daughter named Sura, wine, to the joy of the gods. And Adam, sin, was born when creatures, from want of food, began to devour one another. And Adam always destroys every creature. And Adam hath Niriti for his wife, whence the Rakshasas who are called Naritas, offspring of Niriti. And she hath also 3 other cruel sons always engaged in sinful deeds. They are Bhav, fear, Mahabhaya, terror, and Mriti, death, who is always engaged in slaying every created thing. And, as he is all-destroying, he hath no wife, and no son. And Tamra brought forth 5 daughters known throughout the worlds. They are Kaki, crow, C.I.E, hawk, Fesi, hen, Dhritarashtri, goose, and Suke, parrot. And Kaki brought forth the crows, C.I.E, the hawks, the cocks and vultures, Dhritarashtri, all ducks and swans, and she also brought forth all Chakravakas, and the fair Suke, of amiable qualities, and possessing all auspicious signs brought forth all the parrots. And Krodha gave birth to 9 daughters, all of wrathful disposition. And their names were Mrigi, Mrigamnada, Hari, Badramana, Matangi, Sarduli, Sweta, Suravi, and the agreeable Shorsa blessed with every virtue. And, O foremost of men, the offspring of Mrigi are all animals of the deer species. And the offspring of Mrigamnada are all animals of the bear species, and those called Shrimara, sweet-footed. And Bhadramana begat the celestial elephant Airavata for her son. And the offspring of Hari are all animals of the monkey species endued with great activity, so also all the horses. And those animals also, that are called Kojangvaza, the cow-tailed, are said to be the offspring of Hari. And Sarduli begat lions and tigers in numbers, and also leopards and, no doubt of it, all other strong animals. And, O king, the offspring of Matangi are all the elephants. And Sweta begat the large elephant known by the name of Sweta endued with great speed. And, O king, Surbhi gave birth to 2 daughters, the amiable Rohini and the far-famed Gandhavi. And, O Bharata, she had also 2 other daughters named Vimla and Anila. From Rohini have sprung all kin, and from Gandhavi all animals of the horse species. And Anila begat the 7 kinds of trees yielding pulpy fruits. They are the date, the palm, the hintala, the tali, the little date, the nut, and the coconut. And she had also another daughter called Suke, the mother of the parrot species. And Sursa begat a son called Kanka, a species of long-feathered birds, and C.I.E, the wife of Aruna, gave birth to 2 sons of great energy and strength named Sampati and the mighty Jatayu. Sursa also begat the Nagas, and Kadru, the Pannagas, snakes. And Vinta begat 2 sons Garuda and Aruna known extensively. And, O king of men, O foremost of intelligent persons, thus hath the genealogy of all the principal creatures been fully described by me. By listening to this, a man is fully cleansed of all his sins, and acquireth great knowledge, and finally attaineth to the first of states in afterlife. Thus ends the 66th section in the Shambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 67, Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O worshipful one, I wish to hear from thee in detail about the birth, among men, of the gods, the Danvas, the Gandharvas, the Rakshasas, the lions, the tigers, and the other animals, the snakes, the birds, and in fact, of all creatures one I wish also to hear about the acts and achievements of those, in due order after they became incarnate in human forms. Vasampayana said, O King of men, I shall first tell thee all about those celestials and Danvas that were born among men. The first of Danvas, who was known by the name of Viprachati, became that bull among men, noted as Jasanda. And, O King, that son of Diti, who was known as Hiranyakasipu, was known in this world among men as the powerful Sisupala. He who had been known as Sangalada, the younger brother of Prahlad, became among men the famous Salya, that bull amongst Vahlikas. The spirited Anuhlada, who had been the youngest, became noted in the world as Drishtaketu. And, O King, that son of Diti who had been known as Sivi became on earth the famous monarch Druma. And he who was known as the great Asura Vashkala became on earth the great Bhagdatta. The five great Asuras gifted with great energy, Aisira, Ashvasira, the spirited Aisanku, Gaganamardhan, and Vegavat, were all born in the royal line of Kekya and all became great monarchs. That other Asura of mighty energy who was known by the name of Ketumat became on earth the monarch Amitovjas of terrible deeds. That great Asura who was known as Swarbhanu became on earth the monarch Ugrasena of fierce deeds. That great Asura who was known as Asv became on earth the monarch Asoka of exceeding energy and invincible in battle. And, O King, the younger brother of Asv who was known as Ashwapati, a son of Diti, became on earth the mighty monarch Hardikya. The great and fortunate Asura who was known as Vrishpavan became noted on earth as King Dirgaprajna. And, O King, the younger brother of Vrishpavan who was known by the name of Ajka became noted on earth as King Salva. The powerful and mighty Asura who was known as Aswagriva became noted on earth as King Rochamna. And, O King, the Asura who was known as Sukshma, endued with great intelligence and whose achievements also were great, became on earth the famous King Vrihadratha. And that first of Asura who was known by the name of Tuhanda became noted on earth as the monarch Senavindu. That Asura of great strength who was known as Ishupa became the monarch Nagnajita of famous prowess. The great Asura who was known as Ekachakra became noted on earth as Pritivindya. The great Asura Virupaksh capable of displaying various modes of fight became noted on earth as King Chitravarman. The first of Danvas, the heroic Hara who humbled the pride of all foes became on earth the famous and fortunate Suvao. The Asura Satra of great energy and the destroyer of foemen became noted on earth as the fortunate monarch Munjaksa. That Asura of great intelligence called Nikumba who was never vanquished in battle was born on earth as King Devadhipa, the first among monarchs. That great Asura known amongst the sons of Diti by the name of Sarabha became on earth the royal sage called Parva. And, O King, the great Asura of exceeding energy, the fortunate Kupta, was born on earth as the famous monarch Suparsv. The great Asura, O King, who was called Kratha, was born on earth as the royal sage Parvataya of form resplendent like a golden mountain. He amongst the Asura who was known as Salbha II, became on earth the monarch Prahlad in the country of the Valhikas. The foremost, Among the sons of Diti, known by the name of Chandra and handsome as the Lord of the Stars himself, became on earth noted as Chandravarman, the king of the Kambojas. That bull amongst the Danvas who was known by the name of Arka became on earth, O king, the royal sage Rishika. That best of Asuras who was known as Mritafa became on earth, O best of king, the monarch Pasimanupaka. That great Asura of surpassing energy known as Garishta became noted on earth as King Drumansena. The great Asura who was known as Mayura became noted on earth as the monarch Viswa. He who was the younger brother of Mayur and called Suparna became noted on earth as the monarch Kalkirti. The mighty Asura who was known as Chandravantri became on earth the royal sage Sunaka. The great Asura who was called Chandravinesana became noted on earth as the monarch Janki. That bull amongst the Danvas, O prince of the Kuru race, who was called Dvirgajihava, became noted on earth as Kasi Raja. The Kraha who was brought forth by Singika and who persecuted the sun and the moon became noted on earth as the monarch Kratha. The eldest of the four sons of Danu, who was known by the name of Vikshara, became known on earth the spirited monarch Vasumitra. The second brother of Vikshara, the great Asura, was born on earth as the king of the country called Pandya. That best of Asuras who was known by the name of Valina became on earth the monarch Poundramatsyak. And, O king, that great Asura who was known as Vritra became on earth the royal sage known by the name of Manimat. That Asura who was the younger brother of Vritra and known as Krodhahantri became noted on earth as King Danda. That other Asura who was known by the name of Krodhavdana became noted on earth as the monarch Dandadhra. The 8 sons of the Kalayas that were born on earth all became great kings endued with the prowess of tigers. The eldest of them all became King Jayatsna in Magad. The second of them, in prowess, like Indra, became noted on earth as Aparajita. The third of them, endued with great energy and power of producing deception, was born on earth as the king of the Nishdas gifted with great prowess. That other amongst them who was known as the fourth was noted on earth as Shrinimat, that best of royal Saksha, as that great Asura amongst them who was the fifth, became noted on earth as King Mahanjas, the oppressor of enemies. That great Asura possessing great intelligence who was the sixth of them became noted on earth as Abtru, that best of royal sages. The seventh of them became known throughout earth, from the center to the sea, as King Samudrasena well acquainted with the truths of the scriptures. The eighth of the Kalayas known as Vrihat became on earth a virtuous king ever engaged in the good of all creatures. The mighty Danva known by the name of Kukshi became known on earth as Parvatiya from resplendent as a golden mountain. The mighty Asura Kratna gifted with great energy became noted on earth as the monarch Sauryaksha. The great Asura of handsome features known by the name of Saurya, became on earth the monarch of the Vahlikas by name Darada, that foremost of all kings. And, O king, from the tribe of Asura called Krodhvasa, of whom I have already spoken to thee, were born many heroic kings on earth, Madraka, and Karnaveshta, Siddhartha, and also Kitka, Suvaira, and Suvao, and Mahavira, and also Vahilka, Kratha, Vichitra, Surtha, and the handsome king Nila, and Chiravasa, and Bhumipala, and Dantavkara, and he who was called Durjaya, that tiger amongst kings named Rukmai, and King Janamejaya, Ashda, and Vayuvega, and also Bhuraitejas, Eklavya, and Sumitra, Vardhana, and also Gomukha, the tribe of kings called the Karushakas, and also Kemdurti, Sritayu, and Udvaya, and also Vrihatsena, Kshema, Ugratirtha, the king of the Kalingas, and Madaimath, and he was known as King Iswara. These first of kings were all born of the Asura class called Krodvasa. There was also born on earth a mighty Asura known amongst the Danvas by the name of Kalanemi, endued with great strength, of grand achievements, and blessed with a large share of prosperity. He became the mighty son of Ugrasena and was known on earth by the name of Kansa. And he who was known among the Asuras by the name of Devaka and was besides in splendor like unto Indra himself, was born on earth as the foremost king of the Gandharvas. And, O monarch, know thou that Drona, the son of Bharadwaja, not born of any woman, sprung from a portion of the celestial Rishi Brihaspati of grand achievements. And he was the prince of all bowmen, conversant with all weapons, of mighty achievements, of great energy. Thou shouldst know he was also well acquainted with the Vedas and the science of arms. And he was of wonderful deeds and the pride of his race. And, O king, his son the heroic Aswataman, of eyes like the lotus petals gifted with surpassing energy, and the terror of all foes, the great oppressor of all enemies, was born, on earth, of the united portions of Mahadev, Yam, Kama, and Krodha. And from the curse of Vasishtha and the command also of Indra, the 8 Vasis were born of Ganga by her husband Smtanu. The youngest of them was Bhishma, the dispeller of the fears of the Kurus, gifted with great intelligence, conversant with the Vedas, the first speakers, and the thinner of the enemy's ranks, and possessed of mighty energy and the first of all persons acquainted with weapons. He encountered the illustrious Rama himself, the son of Jamdagni of the Bhrigu race. And, O king, that Brahman sage who, on earth, was known by the name of Kripa and was the embodiment of all manliness, was born of the tribe of the Rudras. And the mighty chariot fighter and king who on earth was known by the name of Sakuni, that crusher of foes, thou shouldst know, O king, was Dwapara himself, the 3rd Yuga. And he who was Satyaki of sure aim, that upholder of the pride of Vrishni race, that oppressor of foes, begotten of the portion of gods called the Maruts. And that royal sage Drupta who on earth was a monarch, the first among all persons bearing arms, was also born of the same tribe of the Celestials. And O king, thou shouldst also know that Kritavarman, that prince among men, of deeds unsurpassed by any one, and the foremost of all bulls amongst Kshatriyas, was born of the portion of the same Celestials. And that royal sage also, Virata by name, the scorcher of the kingdoms of others, and the great oppressor of all foes, was born of the portion of the same gods. That son of Arishta who was known by the name of Hasa was born in the Kuru race and became the monarch of the Kandavas. He who was known as Dhritarashtra born of the seed of Krishna-Dwaipayana, and gifted with long arms and great energy, also a monarch, of the prophetic eye, became blind in consequence of the fault of his mother and the wrath of the Rishi. His younger brother who was possessed of great strength and was really a great being known as Pandui was devoted to truth and virtue was purity's self. And, O king, thou shouldst know that he who was known on earth as Vidura, who was the first of all virtuous men, who was the god of justice himself, was the excellent and greatly fortunate son of the Rishi Atri. The evil-minded and wicked king Duryodhan, the destroyer of the fair fame of the Kurus, was born of a portion of Kali on earth. He it was who caused all creatures to be slain and the earth to be wasted, and he it was who fanned the flame of hostility that ultimately consumed all. They who had been the sons of Pulastya, the Rakshasas, were born on earth among men of Duryodhan one's brothers, that century of wicked individuals commencing with Dasasana as their first. And, O bull among the Bharata princes, Domukha, Dussaha, and others whose names I do not mention, who always supported Duryodhan, in all his schemes, were, indeed, the sons of Pulastya. And over and above these 100, Dhritarashtra had one son named Yuyutsu born of a Vaisya wife. Janamejaya said, O illustrious one, tell me the names of Dhritarashtra's sons according to the order of their birth beginning from the eldest. Vasampayana said, O king, they are as follows, Duryodhan, and Yuyutsu, and also Dasasana, Dussaha and Dashahala, and then Domukha, Vivingseti, and Vikarn, Jalasanda, Sulochna, Vinda and Anuvinda, Dudhasha, Suvau, Dushpradhashana, Durmarshana, and Domukha, Dushkarn, and Kama, Chitra and Ipchitra, Chitraksha, Charuchitra, and Angada, Durmada, and Dushpradhasha, Vivitsu, Vikta, Sama, Arnanva, and Padmanabha, Nanda and Upanandaka, Sanpati, Sushana, Kundodra, Mahodra, Chitravau, and Chitravarman, Suvarman, Durvirochna, Ayovau, Mahavahu, Chitrehapa and Sukundila, Bhimevega, Bhimvala, Valki, Bhimvikrama, Ugrayudha, Bhimira, Kankayud. Dridayudha, Dridhavraman, Dridhaksatra, Somkirti, Andara, Jarashanda, Dridhasanda, Satyasanda, Sehesraveh, Ugrasravas, Ugrasena, and Kshemamurti, Aprajita, Panditaka, Vislaksha, Duradhara, Dridahasta, and Suhasta, Vatavega, and Suvachasa, Adityaketu, Vahavaseen, Nagdakta and Anuyayana, Nishangi, Kuvachi, Dandi, Dandadra, Danugraha, Ugra, Bhimarat, Veera, Veeravahu, Alolupa, Abhya, and Rodrakaman, also he who was Dridhartha, Andarishya, Kuntavedavevi, Dirgalochna, Dirgavahu, Mahavahu, Vyudhoru, Kankangana, Kundaj and Chitraka. There was also a daughter named Dosala who was over and above the 100. And Yuyutsu who was Dhritarashtra's son by a Vaisya wife was also over and above the 100. Thus, O king, have I recited the names of the 100 sons and also that of the daughter of Dhritarashtra. Thou hast now known their names according to the order of their births. All of them were heroes and great warriors, and skilled in the art of warfare. Besides, all of them were versed in the Vedas, and, O king, all of them had got through the scriptures. All of them were mighty in attack and defense, and all were graced with learning. And, O monarch, all of them had wives suitable to themselves in grace and accomplishments. And, O king, when the time came, the Kaurava monarch bestowed his daughter Dussala on Jayadratha, the king of the Sindhus, agreeably to the counsels of Sakuni. And, O monarch, known that King Yudhishthira was a portion of Dharma, that Bhimsena was of the deity of wind, that Arjuna was of Indra, the chief of the celestials, and that Nakula and Sahdeva, the handsomest beings among all creatures, and unrivaled for beauty on earth, were similarly portions of the twin Aswins. And he who was known as the mighty Varchas, the son of Soma, became Abhimanyu of wonderful deeds, the son of Arjuna. And before his incarnation, O king, the god Soma had said these words to the celestials: one cannot part with my son. He is dearer to me than life itself. Let this be the compact and let it be not transgressed. The destruction of the Asuras on earth is the work of the celestials, and, therefore, it is our work as well. Let this virtuousy therefore go thither, but let him not stay there long. Nara, whose companion is Narayana, will be born as Indra's son and indeed, will be known as Arjuna, the mighty son of Pandu. This boy of mine shall be his son and become a mighty warrior in his boyhood. And let him, ye best of immortals, stay on earth for 16 years. And when he attaineth to his 16th year, the battle shall take place in which all who are born of your portions shall achieve the destruction of mighty warriors. But a certain encounter shall take place without both Nara and Narayana taking any part in it. And, indeed, your portions, ye celestials, shall fight, having made that disposition of the forces which is known by the name of the Chakravyuha. And my son shall compel all foes to retreat before him. The boy of mighty arms having penetrated the hardly impenetrable array, shall range within it fearlessly and send a fourth part of the hostile force, in course of half a day, unto the regions of the king of the dead. Then when numberless heroes and mighty warriors will return to the charge towards the close of the day, my boy of mighty arms shall reappear before me. And he shall beget one heroic son in his line, who shall continue the almost extinct Bharata race. Hearing these words of Soma, the dwellers in heaven replied, so be it. And then all together applauded and worshipped Soma, the king of stars. Thus, O king, have I recited to thee the particulars of the birth of thy father's father. Know also, O monarch, that the mighty warrior Drishtadayumna was a portion of Agni. And know also that Siknading, who was at first a female, was the incarnation of a Rakshasa, and, O bull in Bharata's race, they who became the 5 sons of Draupadi, those bulls amongst the Bharata princes, were the celestials known as the Vishwas. Their names were Prithivindra, Sutasoma, Srutekirti Satanika, the son Nakula, and Shruthasena, endued with mighty energy. Sura, the foremost of the Yadus, was the father of Vasudeva. He had a daughter called Pritha, who, for her beauty, was unrivaled on earth. And Sura, having promised in the presence of fire that he would give his firstborn child to Kuntibhoja, the son of his paternal aunt, who was without offspring, gave his daughter unto the monarch in expectation of his favors. Kuntibhoja thereupon made her his daughter. And she became, thenceforth, in the house of her adoptive father, engaged in attending upon Brahmanas and guests. One day she had to wait upon the wrathful ascetic of rigid vows, Durvasa by name, acquainted with truth and fully conversant with the mysteries of religion. And Pritha with all possible care gratified the wrathful rishi with soul under complete control. The Holy One, gratified with the attentions bestowed on him by the maiden, told her, Lamb satisfied, O fortunate one, with thee. By this mantra, that I am about to give thee, thou shalt be able to summon, to thy side, whatever celestials thou likest. And, by their grace, shalt thou also obtain children. Thus addressed, the girl, a little while after, seized with curiosity, summoned, during the period of her maidenhood, the god Surya. And the Lord of Light thereupon made her conceive and begat on her a son who became the first of all wielders of weapons. From fear of relatives she brought forth in secrecy that child who had come out with earrings and coat of mail. And he was gifted with the beauty of a celestial infant, and in splendor was like unto the maker of day himself. And every part of his body was symmetrical and well adorned. And Kunti cast the handsome child into the water. But the child thus thrown into the water was taken up by the excellent husband of Radha and given by him to his wife to be adopted by her as their son, and the couple gave him the name of Vasusina, by which appellation the child soon became known all over the land. And, as he grew up, he became very strong and excelled in all weapons. The first of all successful persons, he soon mastered the sciences. And when the intelligent one having truth for his strength recited the Vedas, there was nothing he would not then give to the Brahmanas. At that time Indra, the originator of all things, moved by the desire of benefiting his own son Arjuna, assumed the guise of a Brahmana, came to him, and begged of the hero his earrings and natural armor. And the hero taking off his earrings and armor gave them unto the Brahmana. And Sakra, accepting the gift, presented to the giver a dart, surprised at his open-handedness, and addressed him in these words, O invincible one, amongst the celestials, Asuras, men Gandharvas, Nagas, and Rakshasas, he at whom thou hurlest this weapon, that one shall certainly be slain. And the son of Surya was at first known in the world by the name of Vasusena. But, for his deeds, he subsequently came to be called Karna. And because that heir of great fame had taken off his natural armor, therefore was he the first son of Pritha called Karna. And, O best of kings, the hero began to grow up in the Sudha caste. And, O king, know thou that Karna the first of all exalted men, the foremost of all wielders of weapons, the slayer of foes, and the best portion of the maker of day, was the friend and counselor of Duryodhana. And he, called Vasudeva, endued with great valor, was among men a portion of him called Narayana, the god of gods eternal. And Valadeva of exceeding strength was a portion of the Naga Sesha. And, O monarch, know that Pradyumna of great energy was Sanat Kumara. And in this way the portion of various other dwellers in heaven became exalted men in the race of Vasudeva, increasing the glory thereof. And, O king, the portions of the tribe of Apsaras which I have mentioned already, also became incarnate on earth according to Indra's commands, and 16,000 portions of those goddesses became, O king, in this world of men, the wives of Vasudeva. And a portion of Shri herself became incarnate on earth, for the gratification of Narayana, in the line of Bhishmaka. And she was by name the chaste Rukmini. And the faultless Draupadi, slender-waisted like the wasp, was born of a portion of Sachi, the queen of the celestials, in the line of Drupda. And she was neither low nor tall in stature. And she was of the fragrance of the blue lotus, of eyes large as lotus petals, of thighs fair and round, of dense masses of black curly hair, and endued with every auspicious feature, and of complexion like that of the emerald. She became the charmer of the hearts of 5 foremost of men. And the 2 goddesses Siddhi and Dhriti became the mothers of those 5, and were called Kunti and Madri. And she who was Mati became the daughter, Gandhari, of Suvala. Thus, O king, have I recited to thee all about the incarnation, accord ing to their respective portions, of the gods, the Asuras, the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, and of the Rakshasas, they who were born on earth as monarchs invincible in battle, those high-souled ones who were born in the wide extended line of the Yadus, they who were born as mighty monarchs in other lines, they who were born as Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaisyas, have all been recited by me duly. And this account of the incarnation, of superior beings according to their respective portions, capable of bestowing wealth, fame, offspring, long life, and success, should always be listened to in a proper frame of mind. And having listened to this account of incarnation, according to their portions, of gods, Gandharvas, and Rakshasas, the hearer becoming acquainted with the creation, preservation, and destruction of the universe and acquiring wisdom, is never cast down even under the most engrossing sorrows. So ends the 67th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 68, Sambhava Parva continued. Janameja said, O Brahmana, I have, indeed, heard from Thce this account of the incarnation, according to their portions, of the gods, the Danvas, the Rakshasas, and also of the Gandharvas and the Apsaras. I, however, again desire to hear of the dynasty of the Kurus from the very beginning. Therefore, O Brahmana, speak of this in the presence of all these regenerate rishis. Vasampayana said, O exalted one of Bharata's race, the founder of the Parva line was Dushmanta gifted with great energy. And he was the protector of the earth bounded by the four seas. And that king had full sway over 4 quarters of this world. And he was the lord also of various regions in the midst of the sea. And that great oppressor of all foes had sway over the countries even of the Mlechas. And during his rule there were no men of mixed castes, no tillers of the soil, for the land, of itself, yielded produce, no workers of mines, for the surface of the earth yielded in abundance, and no sinful men. All were virtuous, and did everything from virtuous motives, O tiger among men. There was no fear of thieves, O dear one, no fear of famine, no fear of disease. And all 4 orders took pleasure in doing their respective duties and never performed religious acts for obtaining fruition of desires. And his subjects, depending upon him, never entertained any fear. And Pajanya, Indra, poured showers at the proper time, and the produce of the fields was always pulpy and juicy, and the earth was full of all kinds of wealth and all kinds of animals. And the Brahmanas were always engaged in their duties and they were always truthful. And the youthful monarch was endued with wonderful prowess and a physical frame hard as the thunderbolt, so that he could, taking up the mountain Mandara with its forests and bushes, support it on his arms. And he was well skilled in 4 kinds of encounters with the make, hurling it at foes at a distance, striking at those that are near, whirling it in the midst of many, and driving the foe before. And he was skilled also in the use of all kinds of weapons and in riding elephants and horses, and in strength he was like unto Vishnu, in splendor like unto the maker of day, in gravity like unto the ocean, and in patience like unto the earth. And the monarch was loved by all his subjects, and he ruled his contented people virtuously. So ends the 68th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 69, Sambhava Parva continued. Janameja said, I desire to hear from thee about the birth and life of the high-souled Bharata and of the origin of Sakuntala. And, O Holy One, I also desire to hear all about Dushmanta, that lion among men, and how the hero obtained Sakuntala. It behoveth thee, O knower of truth and the first of all intelligent men, to tell me everything. Vasampayana said, once on a time, King Dusumant, of mighty arms, accompanied by a large force, went into the forest. And he took with him hundreds of horses and elephants. And the force that accompanied the monarch was of 4 kinds, foot soldiers, car warriors, cavalry, and elephants, heroes armed with swords and darts and bearing in their hands maces and stout clubs. And surrounded by hundreds of warriors with lances and spears in their arms, the monarch set out on his journey. And with the leonine roars of the warriors and the notes of gongs and sound of drums, with the rattle of the car wheels and shrieks of huge elephants, all mingling with the neighing of horses and the clash of weapons of the variously armed attendants in diverse dresses. There arose a deafening tumult while the king was on his march. And ladies gifted with great beauty beheld from the terraces of goodly mansions that heroic monarch, the achiever of his own fame. And the ladies saw that he was like unto Sakra, the slayer of his enemies, capable of repulsing the elephants of foes. And they believed that he was the wielder of the thunderbolt himself. And they said, "This is that tiger among men who in battle is equal unto the Vasas in prowess, and in consequence of the might of whose arms no foes are left." And saying this, the ladies from affection gratified the monarch by showering flowers on his head. And followed by foremost of Brahmanas uttering blessings all the way, the king in great gladness of heart went towards the forest, eager for slaying the deer. And many Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, and Sudras followed the monarch who was like unto the king of the celestials seated on the back of a brown elephant. The citizens and other classes followed the monarch for some distance. And they at last refrained from going further at the command of the king. And the king, then, ascending his chariot of winged speed, filled the whole earth and even the heavens, with the rattle of his chariot wheels. And, as he went, he saw around him a forest like unto Nandana itself, the celestial garden. And it was full of Valva, Aka, Kadira, Ketechu, Kopitha, wood apple, and Bhava trees. And he saw that the soil was uneven and scattered over with blocks of stone loosened from the neighboring cliffs. And he saw that it was without water and without human beings and lay extended for many yojanas around. And it was full of deer, and lions, and other terrible beasts of prey. And King Dushmanta, that tiger among men, assisted by his followers and the warriors in his train, agitated that forest, killing numerous animals. And Dushmanta, piercing them with his arrows, felled numerous tigers that were within shooting range. And the king wounded many that were too distant, and killed many that were too near with his heavy sword. And that foremost of all wielders of darts killed many by hurling his darts at them. And well conversant with the art of whirling the make, the king of immeasurable prowess fearlessly wandered over the forest. And the king roamed about, killing the denizens of the wilderness sometimes with his sword and sometimes by fast descending blows of his make and heavy club. And when the forest was so disturbed by the king possessed of wonderful energy and by the warriors in his train delighting in warlike sports, the lions began to desert it in numbers. And herds of animals deprived of their leaders, from fear and anxiety began to utter loud cries as they fled in all directions and fatigued with running, they began to fall down on all sides, unable to slake their thirst, having reached river beds that were perfectly dry. And many so falling were eaten up by the hungry warriors, while others were eaten up after having been duly quartered and roasted in fires lit up by them and many strong elephants, maddened with the wounds they received and alarmed beyond measure, fled with trunks raised on high. And those wild elephants, betraying the usual symptoms of alarm by urinating and ejecting the contents of their stomachs and vomiting blood in large quantities, trampled, as they ran, many warriors to death. And that forest which had been full of animals was by the king with his bands of followers and with sharp weapons soon made bereft of lions and tigers and other monarchs of the wilderness. So ends the 69th section in the Adivnasavatrana Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa, Adi Parva, section 70, Sambhava Parva continued. Vasampayana said, then the king with his followers, having killed thousands of animals, entered another forest for purpose of hunting. and attended by a single follower, and fatigued with hunger and thirst, he came upon a large desert on the frontiers of the forest. And having crossed this herbless plain, the king came upon another forest full of the retreats of ascetics, beautiful to look at, delightful to the heart, and of cool agreeable breezes. And it was full of trees covered with blossoms, the soil overgrown with the softest and greenest grass, extending for many miles around, and echoing with the sweet notes of winged warblers. And it resounded with the notes of the male kokila and of the shrill cicala, and it abounded with magnificent trees with outstretched branches forming a shady canopy overhead. And the bees hovered over flowery creepers all around, and there were beautiful bowers in every place. And there was no tree without fruits, none that had prickles on it, none that had no bees swarming around it. And the whole forest resounded with the melody of winged choristers. And it was decked with the flowers of every season. And there were refreshing shades of blossoming trees. Such was the delicious and excellent forest that the great bowman entered. And trees with branches beautified with clusters began to gently wave at the soft breeze and rain their flowers over the monarch's head. And the trees, clad in their flowery attires of all colors, with sweet-throated warblers perching on them, stood there in rows with heads touching the very heavens. And around their branches hanging down with the weight of flowers the bees tempted by the honey hummed in sweet chorus. And the king, endued with great energy, beholding innumerable spots covered with bowers of creepers decked with clusters of flowers, from excess of gladness, became very much charmed. And the forest was exceedingly beautiful in consequence of those trees ranged around with flowery branches twining with each other and looking like so many rainbows for gaudiness and variety of color. And it was the resort of bands of Siddhas, of the Charanas, of tribes of Gandharvas, and Apsaras, of monkeys and kinnaras drunk with delight. Delicious, cool, and fragrant breezes, conveying the fragrance from fresh flowers, blew in all directions as if they had come there to sport with the trees. And the king saw that charming forest gifted with such beauties. And it was situated in a delta of the river, and the cluster of high trees standing together lent the place the look of a gaudy pole erected to Indra's honor. And in that forest, which was the resort of ever cheerful birds, the monarch saw a delightful and charming retreat of ascetics, and there were many trees around it, and the sacred fire burning within it. And the king worshipped that unrivaled retreat. And he saw seated in it numerous yotis, Valkilyas and other munis. And it was adorned with many chambers containing sacrificial fire. And the flowers dropping from the trees had formed a thick carpet spread over the ground. And the spot looked exceedingly beautiful with those tall trees of large trunks. And by it flowed, O king, the sacred and transparent Malini with every species of waterfowl playing on its bosom. And that stream infused gladness into the hearts of the ascetics who resorted to it for purposes of ablutions. And the king beheld in its banks many innocent animals of the deer species, and was exceedingly delighted with all he saw. And the monarch, the course of whose chariot no foe could obstruct, then entered that asylum which was like unto the region of the celestials, being exceedingly beautiful all over. And the king saw that it stood on the margin of the sacred stream which was like the mother of all the living creatures residing in its vicinage. And on its bank sported the Chakyevka, and waves of milk-white foam. And there stood also the habitations of kinnaras. And monkeys and bears too disported in numbers. And there lived also holy ascetics engaged in studies and meditation. And there could be seen also elephants and tigers and snake. And it was on the banks of that stream that the excellent asylum of the illustrious Kasyapa stood, offering a home to numerous rishis of great ascetic merit. And beholding that river, and also the asylum washed by that river which was studded with many islands and which possessed banks of so much beauty, an asylum like unto that of Nara and Narayana loved by the waters of Ganga the Ganges, the king resolved to enter into that sacred abode. And that bull among men, desirous of beholding the great rishi of ascetic wealth, the illustrious Kanva of the race of Kasyapa, one who possessed every virtue and who, for his splendor, could be gazed at, with difficulty approached that forest resounding with the notes of maddened peacocks and like unto the gardens of the great Gandhava Chitraratha himself. And halting his army consisting of flags, cavalry, infantry, and elephants at the entrance of the forest, the monarch spoke as follows: I shall go to behold the mighty ascetic of Kasyapa's race, one who is without darkness. Stay ye here until my return. And the king, having entered that forest which was like unto Indra's garden, soon forgot his hunger and thirst. And he was pleased beyond measure. And the monarch, laying aside all signs of royalty, entered that excellent asylum with but his minister and his priest, desirous of beholding that rishi who was an indestructible mass of ascetic merit. And the king saw that the asylum was like unto the region of Brahman. Here were bees sweetly humming, and there were winged warblers of various species pouring forth their melodies. At particular places that tiger among men heard the chanting of rig hymns by first-rate Brahmanas according to the just rules of intonation. Other places again were graced with Brahmanas acquainted with ordinances of sacrifice, of the Angas and of the hymns of the Yajurveda. Other places again were filled with the harmonious strains of summoned hymns sung by vow-observing rishis. At other places the asylum was decked with Brahmanas learned in the Atharvan Veda. At other places again Brahmanas learned in the Atharvan Veda. And those capable of chanting the sacrificial hymns of the Saman were reciting the Samamtas according to the just rules of voice. And at other places again, other Brahmanas well acquainted with the science of orthopy were reciting mantras of other kinds. In fact, that sacred retreat resounding with these holy notes was like unto a second region of Brahman himself. And there were many Brahmanas skilled in the art of making sacrificial platforms and in the rules of krama in sacrifices, conversant with logic and the mental sciences, and possessing a complete knowledge of the Vedas. There were those also who were fully acquainted with the meanings of all kinds of expressions, those that were conversant with all special rites, those also that were followers of Moksha, those again that were well skilled in establishing propositions, rejecting superfluous causes, and drawing right conclusions. There were those having a knowledge of the science of words, grammar, of prosody, of nirukta, those again that were conversant with astrology and learned in the properties of matter and the fruits of sacrificial rites, possessing a knowledge of causes and effects, capable of understanding the cries of birds and monkeys, well read in large treatises, and skilled in various sciences. And the king, as he proceeded, heard their voices. And the retreat resounded also with voice of men capable of charming human hearts. And the slayer of hostile heroes also saw around him learned Brahmins of rigid vows engaged in the repeated muttering of the names of gods, and Homa, burnt offering. And the king wondered much on beholding the beautiful carpets which those Brahmanas offered to him respectfully. And that best of monarchs, at the sight of the rites with which those Brahmanas worshipped the gods and the great rishis, thought within himself that he was in the region of Brahman. And the more the king saw that auspicious and sacred asylum of Kasyapa protected by that rishi's ascetic virtues and possessing all the requisites of a holy retreat, the more he desired to see it. In fact, he was not satisfied with his short survey, and the slayer of heroes at last, accompanied by his minister and his priest, entered that charming and sacred retreat of Kasyapa inhabited all around by rishis of ascetic wealth and exalted woes. Thus ends the 70th section in the Sambhava Parva of the Adi Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.